The next session is not about theory. It's about visibility. So now let's step into the AI mirror. Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about the patterns, gaps, and the opportunities from over 1 million sales role plays across regulated industry. And to lead this conversation, please join me in welcoming the co-founder and the CBO of SmartWinnr. Let's give a big round of applause to Shiladitya Malik.
Good afternoon, everyone. And again, welcome back to this session. What we will talk about, and we are having a lot of discussion about AI role plays, practicality. A lot of questions have been thrown about. We saw Keith's and Jinu's session, which kind of threw some insights from data, and probably will see from some of our fellow participants and panelists in some of the other sessions as well. What I'm going to talk about in today's session is what we see certain patterns emerging, certain lessons being learned from SmartWinnr's experience of doing more than 1 million role plays. And when you have 1 million data points, you can actually see certain things, especially, and we'll not talk about the the aspect from a grassroots level. We will talk about the aspect from a strategic level, especially when it comes to new technology. We as L&D leaders, we have to actually convince our other stakeholders, right? And they have certain questions. Why should we invest? What is the ROI? How do you guarantee that this is going to make a change, right? And we had got some, interesting thoughts, and I think a lot of us who have been on the field, we know certain things through our experience, through gut feeling, but now we have data to prove, right? So with 1 million role plays, what it means is around 120,000 hours of total learning, being done on the SmartWinnr platform on the role play side, and it has saved more than 15,000 trainer days, right? So I think multiple times it has been iterated where we are saying that this kind of technology can actually do things at scale which is not physically possible for us, given the trainers' bandwidth. And all of us know, we work with so many organizations where maybe the headcount has moved from 5,000 people to 7,000 people, but the training team, maybe one more person has been added, right? So it's a very, very kind of familiar story for us. So what I would say that at the end, when we are thinking about sales training, commercial training, we are thinking about the end goal, and the end goal would be that, especially for field teams, be it life sciences, be it insurance, be it banking, where they are actually connecting with customers, the end goal would be, how are you having this conversation with your customers? Are those customer conversations being more effective? That's our end goal, right? And we give them knowledge, we give them skills, we hopefully coach them, train them on their behaviors, so that when the rubber meets the road in the conversation with the customers, they do things effectively. Now, all this while, if that's our end point, where we want to actually check that what you are doing when you are speaking with the customer, the best way to check that would be to be in every customer call, right, and evaluate them. And some of you do field coaching, for example, where you kind of see that what is the readiness, but again, that cannot be done in scale. In absence of that, the next best option for us is to do these role plays, right? So that's kind of a proxy of the field readiness. And because now we are doing it through a technology platform, we have got insights. So I'm going to talk about 5 insights which we have gathered, and this is cross-industry, covering around 6,000 reps, around 126 scenarios, around 9 languages, 14 countries, and around 27,000 role play instances. Okay, so out of this million role plays, for a study, obviously there are different data points. There are certain scenarios which are very custom, which you can't really take into account from doing an analysis perspective. So this is kind of our universe. So whatever data I'm going to share is respect to number one cross industry, but real insights from real role plays. So the first insight that we have is that practice works, okay? And all of us know intuitively that practice works. But when a sales leader comes and say that, why are you taking people, out from my, on the field activities, right? So we need to tell them and show them something. And obviously we have shown them, number of training hours spent, or we have shown them, knowledge improvement on assessments, for example. But nothing is as powerful where we say that, look, we have made people practice and we see that there is an improvement in their conversational score, because that's what sales leaders want to see, right? That's what they want to look at, that, okay, are they being more effective in communicating with the customers? So we have seen, again, in the data set, around 19.3% improvement across board, right? 84% of the reps actually improved. Now, why 100% of the reps didn't improve? Because you have a curve. There are people, there's a bell curve, right? So, you have your top performer, you have your middle performers, but there are some people, AI cannot solve for everyone, right? What is important, these 16% people who are not improving, that's where the manager should spend their time on, right? And if the system kind of identifies these people, right, it's a great win for us, because today we are coaching everyone, but if we put more importance to folks who need that help, that way it's a best combination between kind of AI insights, but the managerial coaching oversight as well. And 68% is the performance gap which narrowed. I'll talk about that just in a moment. There is a very interesting trend here. So we have got, we kind of clustered these reps in terms of their starting score, right? Because we don't have, in this data, if you see, this data is only on their AI role play score. This data doesn't know what their actual sales score is, right? Because we are not privy to every customer sales score. In absence of that, we have to find a proxy of who is a good rep and who is a poor rep. And an average approximation is that if you are first, by the way, in all these cases, the data points we are talking about, people have been trained, they have been assessed, and coaching is the, or AI role play is the third part. So it's not that they are directly being, thrust into AI role play, right? It's a process, right? So we would expect people to be able to kind of, communicate effectively, right? So we have grouped these people into, 4 different kind of, clusters. So if you see, the reps who are the poorest, they actually improve the most, okay? The below average reps, they close the gap. The top performers, they kind of, fine tune, right? Now, again, with the caveat that this is based on their role play performance only. This is not based on their sales performance, okay? So that's an interesting kind of, thought out there. And what means that, we need to focus on the people who are not doing well, because that's where the delta of improvement is the maximum. See, someone who is already running at 95% efficiency, we can maximum eke out another 5%, right? But someone who is, running at 60% efficiency, probably we can, take it them to 80%. So that's our, first insight, that practice helps, and we should kind of, encourage people to practice. Obviously, you would have the question that how much practice is too much practice? How much practice is too less practice? So we will come to that question as well in another slide. Now, the second insight is the harder skills improve the most, okay? Now, again, we are talking about disparate data sets, disparate competencies. So how do we measure which competency is harder than others? The only way we could do that is where we are saying, let me show here, where we are saying that if the initial score is low, we would say that that competency is probably harder than if in the first try people are getting harder, more score, right? So we can see that the scores here, if you see, this is the average score is 39%. improvement is 37%. So improvement percentage is 99.3%. So as and when we are going down this ladder, we can see that average first code increasing means that that competency is kind of easier, right? So for example, getting commitment from a customer, that again, here we have not named each of these competencies, but getting commitment from a customer is a very hard skill, because the only way you can get a customer to commit is if you have done all of the other things well. If we are just talking about a classic sales call, starting with your opening, building relationship, asking probing question, responding to objection, and gaining commitment, right? So gaining commitment is definitely one of the hardest skills, but if you practice more, you will get, a very strong ROI on this. And hence, when we are looking at a strategy in terms of, what skill we should make people practice, again, one way to look at it, the one which gives us most kind of, ROI, and in sales, it's closing, right? It's sales, it's getting commitment. And obviously, sometimes in pharma, in one, we can't get commitment immediately, but at least moving the physician from, one step in the adoption ladder to the next step, right? In insurance, obviously, commitment could be very, would be measured in a much more kind of, specific way, where we can make the customer say, yes, I would like to, I might not like to kind of, buy the product today, okay, but tell me more, right? Okay, I will give you an appointment, right? I need to discuss back. So there are different variations of this. The third one is engagement is voluntary. Now, this is interesting. We have a barrier, by the way, and I think some data shared by Genu and the J&J team saw that, there is an initial inertia of making people comfortable with a new tool, a new technology, Big Brother is not watching you, that's the initial barrier. So if we take away those people who have never started at all because of this barrier, and then we say that people who have started, around 77% people have retried it. So they have taken the same simulation more than once. So it is very interesting. Number one, in a face-to-face role play, will we ever redo the same simulation? Never. Even if we know it is needed, but just because of time commitment, a trainer can never redo another simulation. You have got only one chance. It's like, beyond that you cannot do it, right? But obviously in this simulated environment, people can retry, and the fact they are retrying, it means, number one, it's a safe space. They feel that they're going to improve. They feel that Big Brother is not watching. So a lot of things what we were discussing, that is kind of, sorted, but with the caveat, you need to first get people started, right? That initial inertia we have to break through. 18% people have practice on weekend. Wonderful, right? Learning leaders, business leaders would be, liking this. Okay, because we can never, bring someone on a Sunday and make them, do something. But if they are practicing, and for one particular customer, in Spain, they find 25% practicing on weekend, and they were very astonished because, again, not to cast anything, but, Spanish people normally don't work on weekends. Okay, let me put it that way, right? But, if you make it exciting, and the other thing is that, see, sales is a competitive game. The reps, once they understand that something is going to be helpful for them, is going to make an impact, they will use it, right? This is very interesting. We have a concept called power user. So power users are, someone who can take the same simulation 5 times and more. Why will they take 5 times and more? Number one, they are now addicted. I'm improving. I'm looking at this, response, right? By the way, top performers are more power users. Though their initial score is like 80 or whatever it is, they want to push it high. That is the nature of top performers, right? They would like to be the top. That's the reason they are, there. So around 37% are power users, and 45% is off hour. Okay. Now, off hour, by the way, there's a strong component here for India data also, and we take 9 to 5. But in India, we know the reality. 9 to 5 is not our off hours, right? So our hours probably start after 5, right, or before 9. But you would be surprised, even in US, people are practicing in off hours. So the advantage of giving a platform which is available anytime, anywhere, people do appreciate that. People do engage with that kind of a platform. So it's very interesting. In fact, I was presenting this in another leadership forum, and someone from the audience put it in a nice way, in such a nice way that I've added this into the slide. And he said that, see, completion is compliance, right? I have to complete it first, that is compliance. But retry is commitment. If people have to retry, that is commitment. Wonderfully said. So I have kind of, without his permission, I've taken this and put in my slide. So completion is compliance, retry is commitment, and hence, we don't need the reps to force practice after, but with the, again, caveat, what Jinu said, after creating this environment where this is safe practice, Big Brother is not watching, things like that. However, there is always carrot and stick approach. If I'm having a new product launch, we cannot have this as an optional. I mean, something which can improve 20-25% conversational skills for a new product launch, I cannot leave it at the whim of the reps, right? Sometimes we have to say this is mandatory, this is part of our strategy, and other times we can say, practice makes perfect. Now, what are some of the patterns of skill development that we see? Okay? This is very interesting. What we have seen that when you do a role play, your first time, this is a new role play, this is a new situation, new objections, whatever it is. The first time you do it, you get a feedback, right? And your score is not so high. The second time, you kind of, use some of those feedbacks and you retry it, right? Obviously, you do an improvement, but it is from the third attempt where you go towards mastery, okay? So this is very interesting. Again, 3 attempts to take to 50% proficiency, 9.6% gain over the first retry on third attempt, 65% proficient by attempt 6, and all pass at same level by 77%. So what we are saying is that how much is too much? More than 5 or 6 times practicing the same role play is not, there is a kind of, the curve kind of flattens out, right? But if you look at this data, from attempt 1 to attempt 5, right? So we get a pretty strong improvement, right? So again, if we are thinking this from a strategic rollout perspective, I think what we can actually commit and we can tell to our business leaders, look, you will get results, but you have to commit your team to practice this 3 times, because it always has to be a contract, right? You want the results, we will give you the results. And we are saying that we will not take away time from the field for your reps, but he has to practice 3 times. Something or the other has to give, right? There is no free lunch, okay? So that's, again, very interesting concept. So again, hence we said that, we need to have at least 3 attempts. Now, the other and the 5th insight is, and for some of you who are on pharma, that just imagine that there is a, medicine, the dose is 100 milligram and I'm giving 10 milligram and we are expecting it to work. That's not going to happen, right? And then we cannot blame the doctor that I'm taking 10 milligram and, it's not working, right? So which means that we need to know that, okay, we can get 20% improvement, right? 84% people kind of, improve, right? We need 3 attempts. But if that 3 attempt is not there, if the exposure is not there, then the impact will be limited. The reason I'm sharing this is that when we go back to business leaders, right, we need to be very confident in the way we approach it. And we are saying that, this is not something which is nice to do, you can and cannot do. If there's a new product launch, we want, this is a strategy, this is what the data says, and this is what our approach is. Can you please approve people practicing 3 times? So on an average time is, 7 minutes. So 7 3s are 21 minutes of time I would need from the, rep for this new product launch initiative. Now, the moment we put it in, that perspective, our business leader will say, yeah, 21 minutes, 30 minutes for a new product launch training, I mean, I'm okay with that, right? So the way we position that also, makes sense. So then what it means for leaders, that's the final point I want to cover, is that a lot of time we see a new technology when it comes up, we adopt it because it's new, right? And we have seen, not in L&D space, but we have seen, for example, NFTs and crypto and a lot of things where it was new, it might not have a fundamental, business value, right? So it doesn't work. Thankfully, AI role play is something which actually works, and and this is just our data, but any other provider you go, I'm sure they can give their own set of data, right? It really works, but it cannot be a stand-alone solution, right? So what can we do to make it really impactful when organizations are kind of working with this kind of technology? What makes sense for that to be impactful? Number one is that it should be part of a structured plan. If we are having a new hire journey, it should be linked to the new hire learning plan, right? If we are having a new product launch, again depending on pharma might be it take 1 quarter for a launch readiness. So or in insurance or banking, it might be a 1 month window we have for a new product launch readiness. So but it should be part of the product launch readiness journey basically. So I train you, I assess you, and now you have to do the verbalization part, and that part might not be mandatory. The second part is that there is this whole thing called quantified me. So people actually check with, all of us have got our Apple watches or whatever, we check how our sleep score is, how our weight is changing, all these things, right? It's very important, and if we talk about the Gen Z, they want to take ownership of their journey, and this is also their learning journey. And what we see that when you show them this data that you're improving, time after time, your recurrent kind of investment in this role plays is helping, so they become engaged. So we need to be very clear that those data should not reside just in a Excel spreadsheet. It has to be visualized, it needs to be shown to them in the right way so that they feel that yes, what I'm doing, it's actually making sense. The third part, very important, and we were talking about the role of managers as coaches, 100% for sure. If we don't bring managers into this game, it's not going to be successful, just because of the fact that I think most of the delegates here, they come from large organization, 100,000, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 sales rep. We know that we can do our best kind of theoretizing or strategizing at a corporate level, at a HQ level. However, the influence is at a line manager level. So if we don't give the visibility to the managers, it becomes difficult for them to do it. If we don't show some of this data and insights that if you practice this, and these are leading indicators, right? All these things we are talking about leading indicators. Sales is my lagging indicator. So we need to convince them, we need to bring them into the fold, and we need to also tell them, look, now you can spend your coaching time with only people who need it, because you can open your dashboard, you can see these are the 3 people who actually need that particular help, right? Obviously, you can have recognitions and manage a specific leaderboard. I'm not going to go into the gamification and other details. The other part is this micro challenges. See, when we talk about a sales call can be a end-to-end call, and then a sales call could be just focusing on one aspect, probing questions or objection handling or closing commitment. So we see that the longer you make the, sometimes when we create a scenario, we think, let's create a very complicated 15 minutes, 20 minutes long call, great for training, right? But beyond the training perspective, sometimes it loses its kind of, purpose, because in real life they say that, what, I was having this conversation with one of our customers, and how technology changes behavior. This is a US based customer, and he was saying quite a few of their reps, and in US, as you know, for pharma, especially for oncology and some of these things, they will actually get to meet a customer once every 6 months, not once every month, right? So once every 6 months, I'm meeting this customer. which means I better prepare how to communicate this customer based on that particular customer's profile, right? A lot of them have now got into the habit of, while they're driving to the customer's HCP office, so they will turn on SmartWinnr, they will say, hey, Dr. Smith, how are you doing? Just wanted to share with data. So he just wants to practice on data, right? Though the system is loaded with the whole conversation, but if you speak only on data, it will respond only on data. If you only speak on the probing side, it will respond on the probing side, right? So, and this, we never kind of told ki this is what you should do, but this is the way, sales reps, when they find a tool which is useful, they kind of, improvise on those tools. Then obviously certification, recognition, and quicker kind of, see, in AI role play, there are two things, there are two dimensions compared to assessment, which is, in an assessment, there is no question of repetition. We normally don't say that you have to do this quiz 30 times or 10 times or 5 times, right? Doesn't make any sense, right? So the only focus in assessment is your final score. So when we talk about recognition, when we are talking about gamification, we just talk about the final score, that you be prepared ahead of time and you do your assessment, get your best score, and then I can, rank you and I can give you something. But in AI role play, there's another dimension. And I think that dimension is even more important than the score, which is the practice frequency. So here, when we are talking about badges and scoring, I can give, like, we created for another customer practice ninja badge. So if you, practice 5 times plus, you get a practice ninja badge, right? And then you can, in the national sales meeting, if you have more than 5 practice ninja badge, you can then kind of, get some sort of gift voucher of that, right? So we should focus on practice rather than the absolute score. The absolute score actually doesn't mean too much. The relative improvement of the score, that's what kind of matters. And lastly, you can link it to real world incentives, tied to SPIFs, linked to launch excellence program, field recognition boards. If we are saying that we have this technology which can improve 20-25% conversational skills, and we know that conversational skills improve our sales productivity at the end of the day, I think it should be tied to our real world incentive system. May not be on the score, just on practice, because we say, if you just practice, you're going to improve and it's going to kind of, reflect in the sales productivity. Lastly, a lot of time we are thinking about what kind of dashboards we should, what should we track for AI role plays? Because we have a certain way to track assessments, and in assessments, primary thing what we track is your assessment score, right? And maybe completion rate. So these are the two things. So what we see kind of works here is number one, activation rate. You remember we said that there is this initial hurdle which you have to cross, right? So once you launch this program, how many people go beyond, I need to have 60% adoption rate. What happens when you have 60% adoption rate of the platform? People start to speak with one another and they said, "Arey, I found this useful. You didn't find it. You didn't do it even." Okay, doesn't make. So then they become a minority, and you will see there's a diffusion effect, and people will start, more and more people will start kind of adopting the platform. So that will be my first one. Then at least 40% of our reps should be at 70% proficiency level. Okay. Third one, average attempt we should track at 3 and more. Monthly active users should trend up, because if we are thinking that this is a tool which is going to help people, it's and we get through that critical mass, you will see there's a wider adoption. And then the business trend should be having a positive slope. That's the output. Only once we have done this, then we should try to measure business impact. We are doing some work right now with some of the customers on measure the business impact, but that will come 2-3 quarters late, right? Once you have done all of these activities. So that's kind of the overall concept. So that was a quick overview of what we learned from 1 million role plays and some of the insights what we have seen works. So I've got 3 minutes, but if you have any questions, would be more than happy to take them.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Let's give him a big, big round of applause. Of course, we're now encouraging audience questions, if any. Please to raise your hand. We'll get a microphone pass. Can we get a mic pass to our gentleman at the back? We just also, of course, request you to say your name, the company you represent, and thereby the question.
Hello, my name is Prabhakar Jha. I represent Endkemi Health Specialties Private Limited. My question, when we talk about role plays, in Indian pharmaceutical scenario, we face that our medical representatives normally face different real life scenario, where doctor is even not giving a half a minute. In that case, how we build the capability of using AI or maybe role plays, this kind of model? Because after COVID, the in-clinic discussion is less. More doctors try to avoid the rep. Even don't getting, MRs are not getting a time, maybe less than 30 seconds is the ideal time, I think. And most of my pharma colleagues will agree with that. So how in that different scenario, this role play model will help?
Great question. There are a couple of things I wanted to think about. See, if we are having only 30 seconds instead of 10 minutes, so that 30 second becomes 10 times more important, because now I only have 30 seconds, right? Which means I cannot fumble, right? I have to actually totally be practiced ahead of time, right? That is one thing. So hence, practice becomes even more important in those cases. The second thing is that when a lot of time doctors don't engage, you are absolutely right. But what about that 10-20% time when the doctor engages and he has got one question? Because again, I have got that 30 second, I better be prepared, because I cannot say I will go back, I will come. So if a rep is prepared and if he can respond to that question immediately, that builds credibility, right? The other thing is that, we have this kind of iceberg theory of learning, right? So, 70% of what we learn, it is below the surface. But if we didn't have that 70%, that 30% which is keeping, that 70% is actually keeping us stable, right? So we need to have that practice. So I would say we should practice more even those cases, and we should practice, in more depth, so that the other thing is that once you have practice, you will have confidence. That also gets reflected, see, on the way they, interact with the physician. So these are just some of my, thoughts. We have some of our, partners here who have seen that, again, I'm not talking about SmartWinnr, I'm talking about tools in general, that if you use this kind of tools, even in, generic pharma, for example, branded, non-branded, you will see there might be an increase in the face time in the doctor's chamber. Yeah.
Thank you. Instead of a counter question, can we just give an opportunity to someone else just ahead?
We can discuss offline. Yeah. Thank you.
Just one final question, though we are off time. We just like to entertain one more.
Yeah, Sheeladitya, I would like to see the last slide which you have shared it.
Can we put the presentation again?
So the slide was having a parameters which you suggest we should set, or this is how we should pitch to the business, which are the parameters we should look out for, or minimum attempts we should have it and all. So these parameters you have come up as per your SmartWinnr's experience, or it's like you have it's some standards which you have decided on that aspect?
Yeah, so this is what we have seen, that if you get the parameters at that level, we will see the inflection. Because see, business is going to ask about ROI, and then we will say that, let's first say that, do we have 70%, 60% people practicing at least 3 times over a sustained period of 1 or 2 quarters, then let's talk about the, ROI. Because a lot of time what happens, we do a pilot, for example, and we do it for whatever, 10 days, and we are thinking that behavioral change will happen. I mean, not we as trainers, we know that that's not going to happen, right? But business is always impatient, right? And hence we are saying that, looking at what, where we have seen there is a, like for example, in J&J case where we saw business impact, so things were done in a sustained manner, based on certain parameters, then they did the, ROI study. So that was, the thought behind this slide. Yeah, perfect. Thank you everyone. Again, we can take any of the questions, offline, but appreciate it. Thank you.